96 days until the midterm elections, and Donald Trump looks like he's about to make a big bet that involves you, me, and every other voter. Let me explain. Two Republican senators, John Cornyn and Thom Tillis, are holding up Trump's nomination of Todd Blanche to be Attorney General over the sweeping deal that Trump and the DOJ struck, which is to say the deal that Trump basically struck with himself, to provide the president and his family with full immunity from tax audits by the government. That deal also created a $1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund, which is meant to pay out January 6th rioters. Now, Cornyn and Tillis requested that Blanche narrow the deal that he cut and say in writing that the anti-weaponization fund was dead and that Trump did not have immunity from financial tax audits for life. Blanche has not done that. A planned vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee to advance Blanche's nomination was delayed because Blanche just didn't have the votes.
I mean, we've heard from them. It's just that they refused to commit to writing what he testified to under oath. And it's not a big ask. We're trying to help them get this solved, but they refused to accept our help.
As of today, when Blanche was supposed to be confirmed or at least voted out of committee, this left Donald Trump with a few options, chief among them pulling Todd Blanche's nomination altogether, which is not all that unusual in this administration. In fact, so far this term, 69 of Trump's nominees for federal office have withdrawn their nominations without being confirmed. Now, across both Trump terms, he's pulled the nomination of 5 cabinet level positions, 9 ambassadors, and 15 federal judge appointees. But Trump has not withdrawn his nomination of Blanche, and Blanche hasn't removed himself from consideration. Trump posted on social media today they would instead be playing the waiting game. Quote, John Cornyn of Texas and Thom Tillis of North Carolina, both of whom I refuse to endorse and whose political careers have been ended by my action, are refusing to vote for this great nominee who will remain in any event as acting. I have no objection to temporarily withdrawing Todd's name if they do not do the right thing and putting him back after Cornyn and Tillis are out of office. Interesting stuff. Trump's not willing to part with this nominee like he has been with so many others, and he's hinting at a gamble to try and install Blanche as Attorney General. Lacking Trump's support, Thom Tillis chose not to run for office again, and Cornyn lost his primary to a candidate endorsed by Trump. So Trump is betting that Republicans will maintain control of the Senate, and these two difficult Republicans will be replaced with more loyal and pliable senators. Now, we're going to get to the odds on that gamble in a moment. But first, let's ask, what is it that makes Todd Blanche worth all this trouble for Donald Trump? There are literally over 1 million lawyers in the United States, 65,000 of whom are members in good standing of the Conservative Federalist Society. Trump should have no shortage of attorneys who are willing to do his bidding. Is it a financial matter? Is it tied to the billions of dollars he made while he was president in violation of ethics rules? Is it the joke that isn't a joke, running for a third term in 2028? Or with Blanche having spent 5 months as acting attorney general, has Trump finally found the attorney general of his dreams? Back in 2018, you'll remember Donald Trump shouted at a number of his White House officials, quote, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" Roy Cohn was, for years, Trump's personal lawyer and fixer. Even before that, he was a vicious investigator for Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist crusade. In government, Trump has labored to recreate Cohn in the aggregate. And now it appears that Trump has found an adequate imitator in Todd Blanche. Blanche defended Trump in 3 criminal cases between his terms as president. And even when a trial ends, lawyers owe some permanent duty to their client, including attorney-client privilege. So in a sense, you never stop being someone's lawyer. Todd Blanche clearly thinks so, too. He let this slip during the first day of his confirmation process.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer, and now I'm the Deputy Attorney General.
It's a telling slip. But even without it, Blanche's actions as Attorney General resemble those of a lawyer working personally for Donald Trump. Since becoming acting Attorney General after Pam Bondi left the top job in April, Blanche's DOJ has subpoenaed the phone records of 4 New York Times reporters, one of their mothers and 2 of their spouses, over reporting regarding Donald Trump's Qatari-gifted Air Force One. It's announced a $10 billion settlement between Donald Trump and the IRS that both declared Trump and his family immune from tax auditing by the government in the future and created a $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund for those January 6 rioters, which was declared dead after intense bipartisan and judicial pushback. The DOJ even filed a legal motion in Trumpian language, complete with grammatically incorrect capitalizations, imitating Donald Trump's social media posting style. So Blanche has proven himself to Trump. Trump is repaying the favor by stalling the nomination until, he hopes, new Republicans in the Senate will win in November and confirm Blanche in no time flat. Now that in itself is a big bet, or 5 bets, or 6 bets. Let's take a quick look at our race rating map. This is the way the states that we're going to be looking at very closely in November are leaning, starting with Democratic, lean Democratic toss-up, lean Republican, and likely Republican. Trump is betting that Ken Paxton beats James Tallarico in the Senate race in Texas, keeping that seat red. And he's hoping that Michael Whatley, formerly the chairman of the Republican National Committee, beats the very popular former governor, Roy Cooper, in the Senate race in North Carolina. Now, you can see here with Texas, we've got that as lean Republican, which is kind of fascinating that it's even lean and not likely Republican. So Texas is very much in play. North Carolina, we've got that as lean Democrat. We don't make this stuff up. This is all based on data. He's also betting that Republicans in Ohio and Iowa and Maine keep their seats. Again, Ohio is a very competitive race. We've also got that as lean Republican. We've got Maine as a toss-up right now. But he's hoping that all of these Republicans keep their seats and maintain overall control of the Senate. And there's a lot of things that need to go his way. It's also a big gamble because, in a sense, he's leaving it up to you, the voter. You actually get to decide what this map looks like in November. Donald Trump doesn't. John Cornyn and Thom Tillis were negotiating with the White House behind closed doors. Trump has opted instead to place Todd Blanche's fate in the hands of the public, which makes this very interesting for a discussion that I'm about to have. Joining me now is Mimi Rocah, former assistant United States attorney at the Southern District of New York, and Anthony Coley, MS Now political analyst and former director of the Office of Public Affairs at the Department of Justice during the Biden administration. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. So, Mimi, there's a lot at play here. There's a lot going on. I guess my first question is, why is Todd Blanche so important to Donald Trump right now?
I think you said it in your opening, Ali. He found his Roy Cohn. Todd Blanche has been willing to do things that even Pam Bondi wouldn't, that no one else, certainly in his first administration, which I was no fan of, but they had their limits. Pam Bondi had lines, apparently, or she was just so bad at trying to carry it out. Blanche is willing to try and indict Jim Comey over and over based on seashells and other nonsense that no legitimate prosecutor would, to try and indict senators. I mean, he's been part of everything coming out of this DOJ that is just so abhorrent. And he also lends a legitimacy, I think, to Trump that Trump must just eat up, right? I mean, he does have this background that Pam Bondi didn't have. He is a former prosecutor from the Southern District of New York, which is, I can say it, I'm without bragging. It just is a great pedigree to have. And I think that Trump likes having someone, it legitimizes his belief that these are things that the Department of Justice should be doing. The problem with that, I mean, there are so many problems, but one of the main problems is that in my mind, and why I find this whole thing just so upsetting, really, is that Blanche knows better. Because he was brought up as a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, because he learned the ethos of DOJ, that you pursue cases and facts, not people. The fact that he is doing all of this, I'm not even getting to the slush fund or how he treated the Epstein survivors, but the fact that he's willing to carry out these acts is unspeakable, and I think makes Trump very happy.
I think you're onto something there that Anthony, even without thinking about the specifics of the things that Todd Blanche has been involved in. It's the process here. Todd Blanche is he slipped up, and again, we can all discuss this. We know that a lawyer does owe their client certain obligations forever, but he did say, "I'm Donald Trump's lawyer," and that's kind of what most of us think.
I think I'm on mute. I think you and Mimi both are accurate. Can you hear me now?
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So this guy, Todd Blanche, is the attorney general that Donald Trump has always wanted, right? He wants somebody who will do whatever he wants, despite what the facts are and despite what the law demands. And that's very different, Ali, than what we saw in Donald Trump's very first term. In his first term, Bill Barr had a red line that he would not cross. And he carried a lot of water for Donald Trump, but when it mattered for the future of our democracy, he refused to go along with Donald Trump's big lies. And the same could be said for Jeff Sessions, who Donald Trump wanted him to shut down the FBI investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 campaign. Jeff Sessions rightly refused to do that. He actually recused himself from that. Now, in Trump 2.0, those type of people who have red lines that they are not willing to cross for Donald Trump, they are gone. All of those post-Watergate norms that were meant to keep politics out of DOJ criminal matters, they're gone. I'll say one last thing before you go back to Mimi. When I think about Watergate, this period right now feels worse to me than Watergate, Ali, because with Watergate, Nixon had people around him that resisted his worst instincts, right? The attorney general and the deputy attorney general, they resigned instead of firing the federal prosecutor. Like at the height of Watergate, you had a bipartisan delegation of congressional leaders who marched over to the White House, who told Richard Nixon that you are wrong for trying to interfere with criminal matters and it's time for you to resign. Those type of guardrails in this administration, they are gone. And Todd Blanche is the opposite of what they should be. And that's why Donald Trump is embracing him, even in acting capacity.
So this is, Mimi, we talk about the Southern District of New York, SDNY, which a lot of people joke, Sovereign District of New York, because they really have a reputation for not taking political direction, for doing what the law demands of them. In this particular instance of this slush fund and this IRS deal that Tom Tillis and John Cornyn in particular are objecting to, this is not a complicated matter. This was a self-dealing thing. People in both parties objected to it. A judge said this is not correct. It's supposedly dead. Why? It should not be difficult for a guy with Todd Blanche's pedigree to understand and be able to tell Donald Trump and senators, we will not be going forward with this. You need it in writing? I'll give it to you in writing.
Right. Well, I mean, Todd Blanche was willing to say that, which, is about worth as much as the paper it's on, which it's not on. The fact that Donald Trump apparently is not willing to put it on, even though he's got his Roy Cohn, tells us, I think, that there is something even more valuable to him, which is, I think, this tax immunity. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And he's certainly acting like someone who needs that even more than he needs the revenge on his enemies, which Todd is willing to
Which he's also prepared to do. One never knows.